Thanks very much, Sherm, and thank you, Fred, for having us here today, and welcome, Rob. It's a very tough day to get here. I'll try to do this in 10 minutes, but I think we have to talk about the reality of what we face with any kind of trade agenda. It doesn't matter whether you have an ambitious trade agenda or a non-ambitious trade agenda. The Congress of the United States changed in 2006. My guess is it's going to be more heavily Democratic in 2009. And whoever the next president is going to have to deal with a very difficult atmosphere. That atmosphere is not just political. It's based on an economy that, of course, is I believe, in recession today, whether you call it a technical recession or not. Employment is down. Unemployment rates are up. We have a subprime mortgage crisis. People are losing their homes. Consumer sentiment is down. Everything that should be up is down, and everything that should be down is up, nearly. Even now, corporate profits are being hurt, which were so strong for so long. We've got a problem. And it's now manifesting itself in the Congress, because the Congress looked at the 2006 elections, where through the Midwest, one of the major issues that Democrats who were elected for the first time used was trade. Now, we can sit here and argue that jobs are lost to technology. We can argue that trade agreements have nothing to do with a company moving to Asia or moving anywhere else or sourcing anywhere else. We can argue that till the cows come home, but it's not going to fall. It's going to fall on deaf ears. We have got to understand we have to rebuild credibility of trade as part of a whole competitiveness package here in the United States. But we're not the only one. Look around the world. Look at Korean farmers. Look at the uproar in India. Look what's happening in various diets, legislation, and so on about trade agreements around the world. We've got a problem because it's change. People fear change. We've had enormous movement because of an interdependent world, a globalized world over the last 25 years. And so we face the reality of trying to make sure we can advocate the kind of change that is necessary, the kind of agreements that we need as part of a whole package of items here in the U.S. that's going to create a new consensus, not only on trade, but a new consensus of how we're going to move economically in the country. It is not going to be easy. But let me suggest the May 10th agreement is a step one in that direction. We've been fighting now since 1983 over labor and environmental rights and trade agreements. We have put them in GSP. We have used them in the Jordan agreement, which Charlene brilliantly negotiated. We had side agreements on the NAFTA because that was signed on December 21, 92, before we came into office. We have tried to move this forward on both sides. And let me say the cynicism about trade is not only Democrats anymore. I think those on the panel who are Republicans will tell you in the Congress now, even on the Republican side, which never existed before, there are deep concerns about trade agreements, and whether or not we stand up for American rights in our trade negotiations. So what we need to do is the following, in my view. I'm going to try to make this quick. I'd be glad to take questions. I'm truncating this because there's no need to go through it. Remember, the May 10th agreement also had other things in it about drugs, about port security, and other items. But the real core of it was labor and environment. That's not enough to move the Congress. There's going to have to be some continuing negotiation adequacy by hopefully President Bush, but certainly by the next president, in terms of a new enforcement arm of USTR. What do we do about GSP and the Indian Trade Preferences Act, which, by the way, has enormous, especially GSP, impact on the U.S. Remember, between just India and Brazil alone, $8 billion in products are brought in every year under GSP, given preferences, costs about $330 million in lost taxes. But what's important is the symbolism of it. You look at the National Trade Estimate Report, page after page after page, India and Brazil not living up to either the law or spirit of our agreements or our trade laws. 150 pages on China, not living up to the spirit of their commitments under the WTO and other agreements. Most of that not enforced. And I'm not being, let me just say, we may have enforced more, Charlene and I, but not that much more that would make a real difference with the American people than this administration has. Somebody's going to have to say, either, as Charlene so articulately put it, either we don't reach agreements or we pledge to enforce the agreements we reach. Because if we don't, the American people will continue to grow in their cynicism about how trade affects their lives. Whether or not you and I can connect the dots as they do, they have and they will. It's not just Richard Nixon. Remember, we, as in said, I think, Jerry, you said it, we gave away our markets to Europe and Japan, as we should have after the Second World War. American people are increasingly skeptical, cynical about trade agreements and the impact on their lives, the loss of jobs, the loss of income, lowering standard of living, competing with low-wage countries, etc. So it's going to take leadership, it's going to take negotiation, it's going to take a real package of competitiveness, everything from what do you got, infrastructure, education, health care, and trade, put into a package with the Congress of the United States, House and Senate, by the next president. Whether it is a Republican or a Democrat, it makes no difference. Even John McCain, who described himself as a free and open trader, is going to have to go to the Congress with a package and an enforcement plan, or he's not going to make much progress with the House Ways and Means Committee, Senate Finance Committee, and so on. So my view of this is that at its base, we have a whole range of overlapping issues: foreign policy, economics, domestic fears, domestic politics, all coming together to make it so difficult on the next president and the next Congress to make progress in this area. And without the U.S. making progress, in a multipolar world, we still need to provide leadership. And without us making progress, it's going to be very difficult to move forward if a Doha round is not completed, which I believe cannot be done in an election year this year. Whatever happens in Geneva, and I hope progress is made, but I don't think it can be done. Therefore, the new president's going to have to move that situation. We're not going to be able to move forward on regulatory reform, mutual recognition agreements, convergence, which I think is the next big movement in trade. We can do nothing, literally, on currency, Fred, unless we create some grand bargain with the Congress of the United States, with the next president, over. It's going to take 2 to 4 years to make that happen.